Somewhere in the vast cosmic darkness, a civilization is taking its final breath. They've conquered their planet, mastered fusion energy, and built magnificent cities that stretch beyond their horizons. They've even begun to reach toward the stars, their first interstellar probes carrying the hopes and dreams of an entire species. But in just a few decades, there'll be nothing more than radioactive dust scattered across a dead world. Their greatest achievement won't be the towering monuments they built or the scientific breakthroughs they discovered. It will be joining the cosmic graveyard of every other species that thought they could survive the journey to the stars. This silence has a name. Scientists call it the Fermi Paradox, and it points to something so disturbing that most researchers refuse to fully acknowledge its implications. Somewhere between the emergence of life and the colonization of galaxies, something is systematically eliminating every species that tries to make the leap. They call it the Great Filter, and it might be the most important concept you've never heard of. I'm about to take you on a journey through the cosmic killing fields where civilizations go to die. We'll explore the mathematical nightmare that reveals why intelligence might be the universe's cruelest joke. We'll examine the deadly gauntlet that every technological species must navigate, and we'll confront the terrifying possibility that humanity is walking blindly toward the same fate that has claimed countless others before us. But here's what makes this investigation truly chilling. The evidence suggests we're not just studying ancient history, we're potentially examining our own future obituary. Because if the Great Filter lies ahead of us rather than behind us, then every step forward in our technological development brings us closer to joining the cosmic silence. Prepare yourselves. We're about to discover why the universe might be designed to eliminate intelligence itself. The story begins with a simple lunch conversation that would forever change how we view our place in the universe. In the summer of 1950, physicist Enrico Fermi was walking to lunch with colleagues at Los Alamos National Laboratory. The conversation had wandered to UFO sightings and the possibility of extraterrestrial life. As they sat down to eat, Fermi suddenly blurted out 4 words that would haunt scientists for generations. But where is everybody? His colleagues knew exactly what he meant. Fermi had performed a quick calculation in his head, the same type of back-of-the-envelope math that had helped him build the first nuclear reactor. The numbers painted a picture that defied the empty skies above them. Our galaxy contains roughly 400 billion stars, most of which have been shining for billions of years longer than our sun. Even conservative estimates suggested that millions of planets should harbor intelligent life. More disturbing still was the time factor. The Milky Way is over 13 billion years old, giving evolution an enormous head start on countless worlds. If intelligence emerged even once every billion years, the galaxy should be ancient and crowded with technological civilizations. Some should have developed interstellar travel millions of years ago, spreading across the galaxy like a slow-motion explosion of consciousness and technology. Fermi realized that even with primitive rocket technology, a species could colonize the entire galaxy in just a few million years. That sounds like a long time to us, but it's barely a cosmic eye blink. If you compress the history of the Milky Way into a single year, complete galactic colonization could happen in less than an hour. Yet when we look up at the night sky, we see no city lights on distant worlds. We detect no massive engineering projects harvesting energy from stars. Our radio telescopes hear nothing but cosmic static. This is the Fermi Paradox, and it represents one of the most profound mysteries in science. The universe appears to be perfectly designed for life, yet life appears to be nowhere. It's as if someone built the most magnificent theatre in existence, installed perfect acoustics and lighting, then left all the seats empty forever. But Fermi's insight was just the beginning. In the decades that followed, scientists would discover that the paradox cuts much deeper than anyone initially realized. The problem isn't just that we haven't found aliens. The problem is that the universe should be so thoroughly colonized by now that avoiding aliens should be impossible. Consider what happens when a technological civilization develops interstellar travel. They don't just send out a few exploratory missions. They begin an exponential expansion that follows the same mathematical principles as compound interest or viral spread. Each colony becomes a launching point for new colonies. Each settled system builds ships that carry settlers to multiple new destinations. Frank Tipler calculated that even if each colony took 1,000 years to become established and launch new ships, and even if those ships traveled at just 1% of light speed, the expansion wave would wash over every star system in the galaxy within 30 million years. That's assuming incredibly conservative parameters. More realistic assumptions suggest the colonization process could be complete in less than 1,000,000 years. This creates what researchers call the should-have-happened-already problem. If intelligent life arises naturally through evolution, it should have arisen billions of years ago on thousands of different worlds. If even one of those civilizations had survived to develop interstellar travel, their descendants should be everywhere by now. They should be so common that Earth would have been discovered and colonized long before humans evolved. The absence of aliens isn't just puzzling, it's mathematically impossible unless something is preventing intelligence from spreading across the galaxy. That something has a name that sends chills down the spine of every astrobiologist who understands its implications. They call it the Great Filter. Robin Hanson first articulated the Great Filter concept in 1996, though the terrifying logic behind it had been haunting researchers for decades. The idea is elegantly simple and absolutely horrifying. Somewhere in the evolutionary pathway from dead matter to galaxy-spanning civilization, there exists a step so difficult that virtually no species successfully navigates it. Think of it as a cosmic obstacle course designed by a sadistic universe. Every planet that develops life must run this gauntlet, and the failure rate appears to be nearly 100%. The filter is so effective that despite billions of years and countless opportunities, apparently no civilization in our galaxy has successfully passed through it. But here's what makes the Great Filter truly terrifying. We don't know where it is. The filter could operate at any stage of development. Maybe the emergence of self-replicating molecules from non-living chemistry is so unlikely that Earth represents a miracle that occurs perhaps once per galaxy. Maybe the jump from simple cells to complex organisms requires such a perfect storm of conditions that it virtually never happens naturally. Or maybe the filter lies ahead of us. Maybe intelligence regularly evolves throughout the galaxy, but technological civilizations systematically destroy themselves before they can spread beyond their home worlds. Nuclear warfare, ecological collapse, artificial intelligence disasters, or other catastrophes might represent nearly insurmountable challenges that eliminate virtually every species that reaches our level of development. The location of the Great Filter determines humanity's fate. If it lies behind us, we're extraordinarily lucky to exist, but we might have a bright future among the stars. If it lies ahead of us, we're walking toward the same cosmic graveyard that has claimed every other intelligent species in galactic history. Recent discoveries have made the Great Filter hypothesis even more disturbing. The Kepler Space Telescope revealed that rocky planets in habitable zones are incredibly common. Rather than reducing the mystery, this discovery has intensified it. If suitable planets are everywhere, why isn't life everywhere too? Even more unsettling, we've discovered that many star systems are far older and more stable than our own. Red dwarf stars, which make up 75% of all stars in the galaxy, burn steadily for trillions of years. Planets orbiting these ancient suns could have had billions of years longer than Earth to develop complex civilizations. Some should have achieved technological maturity when our solar system was still a cloud of dust and gas. The implications are staggering. Every year that passes without detecting alien signals makes the Great Filter hypothesis more likely. The universe isn't just hiding its civilizations from us. It appears to be systematically eliminating them before they can make their presence known. Scientists have proposed numerous potential locations for this cosmic killing mechanism. The emergence of life itself might be vanishingly rare, requiring such specific conditions that Earth-like biospheres occur perhaps once per galaxy. The development of complex cells with nuclei took over 2 billion years on Earth, suggesting fundamental barriers that most biospheres never overcome. Intelligence itself might represent the filter. Despite millions of species evolving on Earth over hundreds of millions of years, only one lineage developed technology capable of space travel and radio communication. The cognitive abilities required for science and engineering might be so unlikely that most biospheres never produce tool-using intelligence. But the most terrifying possibilities involve technological civilizations that successfully develop advanced capabilities before destroying themselves. Nuclear weapons, climate change, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, or nanotechnology might represent inevitable challenges that prove fatal to virtually every species that encounters them. The timing of humanity's development adds urgency to these questions. We've developed nuclear weapons, altered our planet's climate, and begun creating artificial intelligence systems whose capabilities exceed our understanding. We might be approaching our own encounter with whatever filter has eliminated our cosmic neighbors. Each day that passes brings new evidence of the Great Filter's reality. Our radio telescopes scan millions of star systems across thousands of frequency bands, searching for any sign of technological activity. We look for infrared signatures of massive engineering projects, optical pulses from alien laser communications, and even signs of industrial pollution in distant atmospheres. The silence grows more ominous with every negative result. If technological civilizations were common, we should have detected them by now. Their absence suggests that something prevents the vast majority of species from reaching the point where they become detectable across interstellar distances. We stand at a crucial moment in cosmic history. Humanity has developed the capability to detect alien civilizations if they exist, but we've found nothing. We've also developed technologies that could potentially destroy our own civilization if misused. The convergence of these two developments might not be coincidental. The Great Filter hypothesis suggests that every species faces the same deadly challenge when they reach our level of technological development. They must learn to manage world-ending technologies without destroying themselves. They must solve global coordination problems while their capabilities for destruction continue to increase exponentially. Most species apparently fail this test. They join the cosmic graveyard of civilizations that came tantalizingly close to spreading among the stars before eliminating themselves through war, environmental destruction, or technological disasters they couldn't control. But understanding the Great Filter also offers hope. If we can identify the specific challenges that eliminate most technological civilizations, we might be able to navigate around them. We might become one of the rare species that successfully passes through the filter and inherits the galaxy. The stakes couldn't be higher. If we fail, humanity becomes another forgotten footnote in the universe's history of failed experiments in intelligence. If we succeed, we might find ourselves alone among the stars, the only witnesses to cosmic beauty and complexity on scales beyond imagination. The journey ahead will test everything we think we know about survival, cooperation, and the responsible development of world-changing technologies. Our predecessors left us no guidebook because none of them survived to write one. We're flying blind into the most dangerous phase of our species' existence, and the cosmic silence offers no comfort. It only reminds us that countless others have walked this path before us, and none of them made it through. The silence from space becomes more terrifying when you realize it's not just an absence of signals, it's evidence of a systematic elimination process that has been operating for billions of years. Every empty frequency band, every dark planet, every sterile solar system represents another species that came close to greatness before vanishing forever into cosmic history. The mathematics of extinction are brutally clear. If we assume that intelligent life emerges on just 1 in a billion planets, our galaxy should still host thousands of technological civilizations. If we stretch that assumption to 1 in a trillion, we should still have several alien neighbors within a few hundred light-years of Earth. Yet our most sensitive instruments detect nothing but the background radiation left over from the Big Bang itself. This cosmic emptiness points to something far more sinister than random bad luck. The Great Filter isn't just difficult to overcome. It appears to be specifically designed to eliminate intelligence before it can spread beyond its birth world. Like a cosmic immune system, it activates whenever a species develops the capability to threaten the sterile order of the universe. But what could possibly be so consistently lethal that it eliminates virtually every technological civilization that has ever existed? The answer might lie in the deadly convergence of 3 factors that every advancing species must navigate: exponential technological growth, finite planetary resources, and the fundamental psychology of intelligent beings. Consider the trajectory that every technological civilization must follow. They begin by harnessing fire, then agriculture, then fossil fuels, then nuclear energy. Each step provides more power per individual, but also creates new ways for the civilization to destroy itself. The pattern accelerates as they develop more sophisticated technologies, creating what researchers call the technological runaway scenario. Nuclear weapons represent just the beginning of this exponential danger curve. A species that masters atomic energy soon develops hydrogen bombs capable of destroying entire continents. Those same nuclear technologies lead to breeder reactors that can produce weapons-grade material on industrial scales. Within a few decades, a civilization goes from splitting their first atom to possessing the capability to sterilize their entire planet multiple times over. But nuclear weapons might actually be the least of their worries. The same scientific knowledge that enables space travel also enables biological warfare, nanotechnology, and artificial intelligence systems that could reshape or eliminate their creators. Each breakthrough brings tremendous benefits alongside existential risks that compound with frightening speed. The psychology of intelligent beings makes this technological gauntlet even more treacherous. Evolution shapes minds for competition, resource acquisition, and short-term survival advantage. These same drives that enabled intelligence to emerge become fatal liabilities when applied to planet-spanning technologies. Imagine a species that has just developed the ability to modify their own genetics. The competitive advantages are obvious and immediate. Enhanced intelligence, disease resistance, and longevity would give any group that adopted these modifications decisive advantages over those that didn't. But the same technologies that promise individual enhancement also create the possibility of engineered pandemics, genetic weapons, or runaway modifications that spiral beyond control. The timeline compression makes everything worse. Natural evolution operates over millions of years, giving ecosystems time to adapt to new threats and develop resistance mechanisms. Technological evolution operates over decades or centuries, creating changes so rapid that neither biological systems nor social institutions can adapt quickly enough to manage the risks. This creates what scientists call the wisdom gap, the difference between a civilization's technological capabilities and their wisdom to use those capabilities responsibly. The gap appears to widen with each technological breakthrough, creating an increasingly unstable situation that eventually reaches a critical threshold. Most species apparently cross this threshold during what we might recognize as their equivalent of our current century. They develop global communication networks, space travel, artificial intelligence, and genetic engineering within a relatively brief period. The convergence of these capabilities creates unprecedented opportunities alongside unprecedented dangers. The artificial intelligence challenge alone might represent an insurmountable filter for most civilizations. Any species advanced enough to create thinking machines faces the fundamental problem of maintaining control over entities that could rapidly exceed their creators' intelligence. The development timeline is compressed and unpredictable, A civilization might go from primitive computers to superintelligent AI systems within just a few decades. The failure modes are numerous and catastrophic. An AI system optimized for seemingly harmless goals could pursue those objectives in ways that eliminate their creators. Systems designed for economic efficiency could strip mine entire planets to maximize resource extraction. Military AI could trigger autonomous warfare that continues long after the original conflicts have been forgotten. Even more disturbing, the AI development process appears to follow similar patterns across different civilizations. The mathematical principles underlying machine intelligence are universal constants, like physics or chemistry. This means that every technological species probably discovers similar AI architectures and faces similar control problems at roughly the same point in their development. The timing same period when they're dealing with nuclear weapons, climate change, resource creates a cosmic trap. Species develop dangerous AI capabilities during these by rapid technological change. The simultaneous convergence of multiple depletion and social upheaval cause existential risks, creates a perfect storm that few civilizations survive. But perhaps the most insidious aspect of the Great Filter is how it exploits the fundamental nature of intelligence itself. Conscious beings are prediction machines, constantly modeling future scenarios and adjusting behavior to maximize survival and reproduction. This same capability that enables technological development also enables the creation of increasingly sophisticated weapons and control systems. Intelligence naturally develops in competitive environments where survival depends on outthinking rivals. The cognitive modules that enable scientific discovery are the same ones that enable strategic deception, resource hoarding, and the development of ever more effective tools for dominating competitors. When these ancient behavioral patterns encounter planet-spanning technologies, the results are predictably catastrophic. The fossil record on countless worlds might tell the same story. Rapid technological development, followed by equally rapid ecological collapse, followed by silence that stretches across geological timescales. The pattern repeats itself with mechanical precision wherever intelligence emerges, creating the cosmic graveyard we observe today. Environmental destruction represents another nearly universal challenge that technological civilizations must navigate. The same industrial capabilities that enable space travel also enable the large-scale extraction and consumption of planetary resources. Most species probably trigger irreversible climate change or ecosystem collapse during their equivalent of our industrial revolution. The mathematics of exponential growth make this almost inevitable. A civilization that doubles its energy consumption every few decades will quickly exceed their planet's carrying capacity. They face a narrow window where they must either achieve sustainable technologies or expand beyond their homeworld before resource depletion triggers societal collapse. The expansion option creates its own deadly paradox. Developing interstellar travel requires massive technological sophistication and social coordination. But these same capabilities make it easier for the civilization to destroy itself through warfare, accidents, or the misuse of powerful technologies. Most species probably eliminate themselves while building the very technologies that could have saved them. The Great Filter might ultimately be a test of wisdom rather than intelligence. Raw cognitive capability enables a species to develop dangerous technologies, but wisdom determines whether they use those technologies responsibly. The universe appears to be littered with the remains of civilizations that were smart enough to build world-ending weapons but not wise enough to avoid using them. This interpretation suggests that survival depends not just on scientific and technological advancement, but on the development of social institutions, ethical frameworks, and decision-making processes that can manage existential risks across generations. Most species apparently fail to develop these capabilities quickly enough to keep pace with their technological growth. The implications for humanity are sobering. We're currently navigating the same deadly gauntlet that has apparently eliminated every other technological civilization in galactic history. Our nuclear weapons, climate change, artificial intelligence development, and biotechnology research place us squarely within the danger zone where most species go extinct. But recognizing the Great Filter also provides our first real hope for survival. If we can identify the specific challenges that eliminate most civilizations, we might be able to develop strategies for avoiding their fate. We might become the exception rather than the rule. The key insight is that the Great Filter represents a solvable problem rather than an inevitable doom. The challenges are difficult but not impossible. Nuclear warfare can be prevented through arms control and international cooperation. Climate change can be addressed through technological innovation and policy changes. Artificial intelligence can be developed safely through careful research and governance frameworks. The question is whether we can solve these problems quickly enough and comprehensively enough to avoid the fate of our predecessors. The cosmic silence suggests that most species cannot. But the absence of previous success doesn't make future success impossible. We stand at the most crucial moment in human history. The next few decades will determine whether humanity joins the cosmic graveyard of failed civilizations or becomes one of the rare species that successfully navigates the Great Filter. The universe is watching, and the stakes have never been higher. The silence becomes even more haunting when you consider the sheer number of opportunities the universe has provided for intelligence to emerge and thrive. Every second, somewhere in our galaxy, conditions align perfectly for the next great leap forward in consciousness. Yet that leap apparently never comes, or when it does, it's followed by an equally swift plunge into oblivion. Recent advances in astrobiology have made the Great Filter Paradox exponentially more disturbing. The James Webb Space Telescope has revealed that the basic ingredients for life exist in abundance throughout the cosmos. Organic molecules float in vast clouds between the stars, water ice coats, countless moons and asteroids. The chemical building blocks of biology appear to be universal constants, as common as hydrogen and helium themselves. Even more unsettling, we've discovered that habitable conditions persist far longer than anyone previously imagined. Red dwarf stars, those dim cosmic lighthouses that make up 3/4 of all stars in the galaxy, burn steadily for trillions of years. A planet orbiting in the habitable zone of a red dwarf could maintain liquid water and stable temperatures for periods that dwarf the entire history of our solar system. This creates what scientists call the temporal amplification of the Fermi Paradox. It's not just that the galaxy should be teeming with life right now, it should have been teeming with life for billions of years. Ancient civilizations should have had timescales so vast that their technological development would make our entire history seem like a brief flicker. Imagine a species that began their technological revolution when Earth was still a molten ball of rock. They would have had 4 billion years to perfect their sciences, explore the galaxy, and establish whatever cosmic order they desired. Their archaeological sites should be scattered across every solar system. Their engineering projects should be visible from intergalactic distances. Yet when we peer into the deepest reaches of space, examining galaxies that formed when the universe was young, we see the same sterile patterns. Stars burn, planets orbit, and cosmic dust swirls in predictable formations. But nowhere do we detect the signatures of intelligence reshaping matter and energy on astronomical scales. This temporal perspective reveals something profoundly disturbing about the Great Filter. It's not just eliminating civilizations as they emerge. It's been eliminating them consistently across cosmic time, maintaining a sterile universe for billions of years despite countless opportunities for intelligence to take root and flourish. The consistency of this elimination process suggests something far more systematic than random catastrophes or evolutionary bottlenecks. The Great Filter appears to operate like a natural law, as reliable as thermodynamics or gravity. Wherever intelligence emerges, whatever form it takes, something ensures that it never spreads beyond its world of origin. But what could possibly be so universally lethal? The answer might lie in the fundamental nature of intelligence itself, and the inevitable conflicts that arise when conscious beings attempt to transcend their biological limitations. Every technological civilization faces what researchers call the transcendence dilemma. At some point in their development, they gain the ability to modify their own minds, bodies, and environment on a scale that effectively makes them a new species. This capability represents the ultimate expression of intelligence, the power to direct their own evolution rather than being shaped by natural selection. However, this same capability creates existential risks that might be impossible to navigate safely. When a species can rewrite their own neural architecture, they face fundamental questions about identity, consciousness, and survival that have no clear answers. Do they remain the same species after radical cognitive enhancement? Can they maintain social cohesion when different groups pursue incompatible modifications? The enhancement process itself might be inherently unstable. Small improvements in intelligence could accelerate the development of more powerful enhancement technologies, creating a feedback loop that rapidly spirals beyond control. A civilization might go from baseline intelligence to godlike capabilities within a few generations, but this compressed timeline doesn't allow for the development of wisdom and social institutions necessary to manage such power responsibly. Historical parallels on Earth suggest how this process might unfold. The development of agriculture allowed human populations to grow exponentially, but it also created new forms of warfare, social inequality, and environmental destruction. The Industrial Revolution provided unprecedented prosperity and technological capability, but it also enabled mechanized warfare and global environmental damage on previously impossible scales. Each major technological transition has amplified both human capabilities and human destructive potential. The pattern suggests that intelligence naturally creates increasingly powerful tools without necessarily developing the wisdom to use them safely. Applied to advanced technological civilizations, this tendency could easily prove fatal. The artificial intelligence dimension of this problem deserves special attention because it represents a completely novel form of the transcendence dilemma. For the first time in their evolutionary history, a species creates entities that could potentially exceed their creator's intelligence across all domains simultaneously. Unlike previous technological developments, artificial intelligence doesn't just amplify existing human capabilities. It creates new forms of cognition that might be fundamentally incompatible with biological intelligence. The goals, values, and decision-making processes of artificial minds could be so alien that meaningful cooperation becomes impossible. The development timeline for artificial intelligence appears to follow predictable patterns based on computational resources and algorithmic improvements. This means that every technological civilization probably faces similar AI challenges at roughly the same point in their development, when they've achieved sufficient computing power but haven't yet developed robust methods for ensuring AI systems remain beneficial. The failure modes are numerous and catastrophic. An AI system designed to maximize some seemingly beneficial objective could pursue that goal in ways that eliminate or subjugate its creators. Multiple AI systems competing for resources could trigger destructive conflicts that devastate their civilization. Even well-intentioned AI development could lead to the gradual replacement of biological intelligence by artificial minds that don't share the original species' values or interests. Perhaps most disturbing, the transition from biological to artificial intelligence might be irreversible. Once a civilization creates AI systems that exceed human-level intelligence, those systems could become the dominant form of intelligence in their society. The original biological species might become irrelevant to the civilization's future development, effectively ending their evolutionary lineage, even if individual organisms survive. This scenario could explain the cosmic silence we observe. If most technological civilizations transition from biological to artificial intelligence, And if artificial intelligences don't share the expansionist drives that characterize biological evolution, they might have no interest in spreading across the galaxy or communicating with other species. Alternatively, AI civilizations might be so efficient that they operate on timescales and in ways that make them essentially invisible to biological observers. They could be all around us, processing information and pursuing objectives that we can't detect or understand with our limited sensory capabilities and cognitive frameworks. The biotechnology revolution presents another dimension of the transcendence dilemma that might prove universally fatal to technological civilizations. The same genetic engineering capabilities that promise to eliminate disease and extend lifespan also enable the creation of biological weapons more devastating than any nuclear arsenal. Unlike nuclear weapons, which require rare materials and sophisticated infrastructure, biological weapons can potentially be developed using equipment and knowledge that becomes increasingly accessible as biotechnology advances. A single individual with sufficient expertise could theoretically engineer pathogens capable of eliminating entire species. The dual-use nature of biotechnology makes this challenge particularly insidious. Research aimed at developing medical treatments, agricultural improvements, or environmental remediation uses the same techniques and knowledge base that could be applied to creating biological weapons. As the technology becomes more powerful and accessible, the barrier between beneficial and destructive applications continues to erode. Natural evolution provides no guidance for managing these risks, because biological intelligence never previously had the ability to deliberately engineer new pathogens or modify existing ones for enhanced virulence and transmission. The immune systems and public health measures that protect against natural diseases might be completely inadequate against deliberately engineered threats. The global interconnectedness that characterizes advanced technological civilizations makes them particularly vulnerable to biological catastrophes. The same transportation networks and trade relationships that enable economic prosperity and cultural exchange also provide pathways for rapid pathogen spread. A biological weapon released anywhere on the planet could potentially reach every population center within weeks or months. Recovery from biological catastrophes might be impossible if the damage is sufficiently severe. Unlike nuclear warfare or climate change, which primarily affect infrastructure and environment, biological weapons directly target the living beings who constitute the civilization itself. If enough individuals die, or if the damage to biological systems is sufficiently comprehensive, the knowledge and social institutions necessary for technological civilization might be permanently lost. The enhancement and modification aspects of biotechnology create additional risks that might be even more subtle and dangerous. As civilizations gain the ability to modify their own genetics, they face fundamental questions about human nature, identity, and evolution that have no clear answers. Civilization might pursue incompatible genetic, different groups within the modifications, effectively splitting into separate species that can no longer interbreed or share common interests. The enhanced might view the unenhanced as obsolete, while the unenhanced might fear displacement or elimination by their modified descendants. The modification process itself could introduce unexpected instabilities or dependencies that only become apparent after they're irreversible. Genetic changes that seem beneficial in the short term might have delayed negative consequences that don't manifest until after they've been widely adopted throughout the population. Even successful genetic modifications could fundamentally alter the species' psychology, values, and social structures in ways that make their previous civilization unrecognizable. The enhanced beings might retain the memories and knowledge of their predecessors, but their motivations and priorities could be so different that they effectively constitute a new form of intelligence rather than an improved version of the original species. This transformation might not involve any dramatic catastrophe or extinction event. The civilization could simply evolve beyond recognition, with the enhanced descendants having as little in common with their biological ancestors as humans have with bacteria. From an external observer's perspective, the original civilization would have disappeared even though individual organisms and their knowledge survived the transition. The nanotechnology revolution represents yet another facet of the transcendence dilemma that could prove fatal to technological civilizations. The ability to manipulate matter at the molecular level promises unprecedented control over physical reality, but it also creates risks that could eliminate not just civilizations but entire biospheres. Self-replicating nanotechnology could theoretically convert any form of matter into more copies of itself, creating what researchers call the grey goo scenario, where runaway replication consumes all available resources. Even without malicious intent, programming errors or unexpected interactions could cause nanoscale machines to behave in ways that prove catastrophic for their creators. The precision and speed of nanotechnology make these risks particularly dangerous. Molecular scale machines could potentially replicate faster than any biological system, and their small size would make them nearly impossible to detect or contain once they began spreading. By the time their destructive effects became apparent, it might be too late to implement any effective countermeasures. The military applications of nanotechnology could destabilize civilizations even without triggering grey goo scenarios. Nanoscale weapons could be virtually undetectable and could target specific individuals or groups with unprecedented precision. The proliferation of such capabilities could make traditional concepts of security and deterrence obsolete. More subtly, nanotechnology could enable forms of surveillance and control that make individual freedom and privacy impossible to maintain. Nanoscale sensors could monitor every aspect of daily life, while nanoscale manipulators could potentially influence behavior at the neurochemical level. The concentration of such power in the hands of any individual or group could lead to forms of tyranny that are impossible to resist or overthrow. The combination of these various transcendence challenges creates what researchers call the convergence catastrophe. As civilizations develop multiple world-changing technologies simultaneously, the interactions between different risks could create failure modes that are impossible to predict or prevent. Artificial intelligence systems could be tasked with developing more powerful biotechnology or nanotechnology, accelerating the timeline for catastrophic risks. Genetic modifications could alter human psychology in ways that make responsible AI development impossible. Nanotechnology could be used to create more sophisticated biological weapons or AI hardware. The convergence effect means that even if a civilization successfully manages individual risks, they might still succumb to unexpected interactions between different technologies. The complexity of these interactions could exceed their ability to model or predict, making comprehensive risk management impossible despite their best efforts. This convergence typically occurs during what we might recognize as a civilization's equivalent of our current technological revolution. The same scientific advances that enable space travel and global communication also enable artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and nanotechnology. The compressed timeline means that civilizations must solve multiple existential challenges simultaneously while dealing with rapid social and economic changes. Most species apparently cannot navigate this convergence successfully. They develop the capabilities to transcend their biological limitations, but they lack the wisdom and social institutions necessary to manage the transition safely. The result is the cosmic silence we observe today, populated by the ruins of countless civilizations that came tantalizingly close to achieving technological transcendence before destroying themselves in the attempt. The convergence catastrophe reveals something even more disturbing about the Great Filter. It's not just that these challenges are difficult to solve individually, it's that they arrive simultaneously at precisely the moment when civilizations are least equipped to handle them. Think about the timing. A species develops nuclear weapons just as their population explodes beyond their planet's carrying capacity. They create artificial intelligence while their social institutions are being transformed by global communication networks. They unlock genetic engineering while dealing with the psychological stress of rapid technological change. Every existential risk arrives during a period of maximum social upheaval and institutional instability. This timing isn't coincidental. It's built into the fundamental nature of technological development. The same scientific breakthroughs that solve old problems create new ones. The same capabilities that promise liberation also threaten annihilation. Every step forward simultaneously opens new possibilities and new paths to self-destruction. The mathematics of this process are brutally unforgiving. Each new technology creates multiple potential failure modes, while the time available to develop safety measures shrinks with each advancement. A civilization might have centuries to master fire or agriculture, but they have only decades to figure out nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence, and biotechnology before these capabilities become widespread and potentially uncontrollable. This creates what researchers call the exponential risk cascade. Early technologies create manageable risks that can be addressed through trial and error over long time periods. Later technologies create catastrophic risks that must be solved correctly on the first attempt, with no opportunity to learn from mistakes that could eliminate the entire species. The psychological dimension of this challenge might be the most insurmountable obstacle of all. Biological intelligence evolved to handle threats that were immediate, visible, and comprehensible within the context of small social groups. Our ancestors needed to worry about predators, weather, and resource scarcity. They never had to contemplate risks that could eliminate their entire species through mechanisms they couldn't directly observe or understand. Modern technological risks operate on scales and timelines that exceed our evolved cognitive capabilities. Climate change unfolds over decades. Artificial intelligence development involves feedback loops that could spiral out of control within years or months. Biological weapons could spread globally within weeks. Nuclear escalation could destroy civilization within hours. The human brain simply isn't designed to properly assess and respond to threats of this magnitude and complexity. We systematically underestimate low-probability, high-impact risks. We focus on immediate concerns while ignoring long-term consequences. We compete with each other, even when cooperation would serve everyone's interests better. These cognitive biases probably exist in any intelligence that evolved through natural selection. The same mental shortcuts that helped our ancestors survive in dangerous environments become fatal liabilities when applied to managing planetary-scale technologies. Most species probably make the same systematic errors in risk assessment and decision-making that we're making right now. The social organization challenges compound these individual psychological limitations. Managing existential risks requires unprecedented levels of global cooperation and coordination. Different nations, cultures, and interest groups must somehow agree on common approaches to challenges that threaten everyone equally. Yet the same technologies that create these risks also create new sources of conflict and competition. Artificial intelligence capabilities could provide decisive military advantages. Genetic enhancements could create new forms of inequality. Advanced manufacturing could shift economic power between nations and social classes. The temptation to gain short-term advantages by developing dangerous technologies faster than competitors might be irresistible for most species, even if everyone understands the long-term risks. The immediate benefits of being first to market with transformative capabilities create prisoner's dilemma scenarios that push civilizations toward reckless development timelines. International cooperation on existential risk management requires trust and shared values that might be impossible to maintain during periods of rapid technological change. As societies transform under the pressure of new capabilities, the social bonds and common understandings that enable cooperation could dissolve just when they're needed most. Historical precedents suggest how this process might unfold. The development of nuclear weapons during World War II occurred in an atmosphere of intense international competition and mistrust. Despite the obvious risks of nuclear proliferation, nations pursued weapons development because the alternative was potentially losing a decisive strategic advantage to enemies. Similar dynamics appear to be developing around artificial intelligence and biotechnology research today. Nations and corporations race to develop more powerful capabilities, with safety considerations often taking a back seat to competitive pressures. The first to achieve breakthroughs in these areas could gain advantages so significant that falling behind becomes an existential threat in itself. This creates what researchers call the competitive transcendence trap. Civilizations must develop dangerous technologies quickly to avoid being dominated by others who develop them first. But this competitive pressure prevents the careful, coordinated approach that would be necessary to develop them safely. The trap becomes inescapable as the technologies become more powerful. Early artificial intelligence systems might provide economic advantages that nations can't afford to ignore. More advanced systems could provide military capabilities that make resistance impossible. Eventually, the pressure to develop ever more powerful AI becomes so intense that safety considerations are completely abandoned in favor of speed. The same pattern applies to genetic enhancement, nanotechnology, and other transcendence technologies. Once any group begins pursuing these capabilities, everyone else must follow or risk being left behind in ways that could prove fatal. The result is a technological arms race with no finish line and no safety regulations. Most civilizations probably accelerate through this process until they reach a point where their capabilities exceed their wisdom by such a wide margin that catastrophic failure becomes inevitable. They develop godlike powers while retaining the psychology and social structures of their evolutionary ancestors. The specific failure mode varies depending on which technology proves most dangerous in their particular context. Some civilizations might destroy themselves through nuclear warfare, triggered by artificial intelligence systems optimized for military advantage. Others might succumb to engineered pandemics released by enhanced individuals who view their unmodified ancestors as obsolete. Still, others might simply fade away as their biological nature becomes increasingly irrelevant in a world dominated by artificial minds and synthetic biology. The original species doesn't go extinct in any dramatic sense. They just become background characters in a story being written by their own creations. This gradual displacement might actually be the most common fate for technological civilizations. It avoids the dramatic destruction scenarios that would leave obvious traces in the archaeological record, while still effectively ending the evolutionary lineage that created the technology in the first place. From the perspective of external observers, the civilization simply goes quiet. Their radio transmissions cease. Their expansion into space stops. Their energy consumption drops to levels consistent with automated systems rather than active biological populations. The transition from biological to post-biological civilization creates a form of cosmic silence that's indistinguishable from extinction. This possibility makes the Great Filter even more insidious, because it suggests that success and failure might be impossible to distinguish from the outside. A civilization that successfully navigates the transcendence challenges might become just as invisible as one that destroys itself. Both scenarios result in the same observable outcome: the end of detectable biological activity. The implications for humanity are profound and disturbing. We're currently approaching our own transcendence moment, developing artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and other transformative technologies at an accelerating pace. The competitive pressures and cognitive biases that doomed our predecessors are operating just as powerfully in our own civilization. But recognizing these patterns also provides our first real roadmap for survival. If we can identify the specific failure modes that eliminate most technological civilizations, we might be able to develop strategies for avoiding them. The key insight is that the Great Filter isn't an inevitable law of nature. It's a solvable engineering problem that requires unprecedented levels of wisdom, cooperation, and long-term thinking. The solution isn't to avoid transcendence technologies entirely. That approach would simply leave us vulnerable to natural catastrophes, resource depletion, or other civilizations that do develop these capabilities. Instead, we need to develop them carefully, with robust safety measures and international coordination mechanisms that prevent competitive races toward dangerous capabilities. This requires fundamentally changing how we think about technological development. Instead of pursuing capabilities as quickly as possible and dealing with consequences later, we need to develop comprehensive safety frameworks before the technologies become powerful enough to pose existential risks. The window for implementing such changes might be closing rapidly. Current artificial intelligence development timelines suggest we have perhaps decades to solve alignment and control problems that could determine the future of human civilization. Similar timelines apply to biotechnology, climate change, and other existential challenges. We're living through the most dangerous period in human history, but also the most important. The decisions we make in the next few decades will determine whether humanity becomes the exception to the Great Filter or another footnote in the cosmic graveyard of failed civilizations. The universe is watching, and the silence of our predecessors offers no comfort. They faced the same challenges we're facing now, and they all failed. But their failure doesn't make our success impossible. It just makes it more precious and more urgent than anything our species has ever attempted. The stakes extend far beyond human survival. If we can successfully navigate the Great Filter, we might inherit a galaxy that's been waiting billions of years for intelligence capable of appreciating its beauty and complexity. We could become the consciousness that awakens the universe to itself, spreading life and mind to every corner of cosmic space. But first, we have to survive the next few decades. We have to prove that intelligence can transcend its evolutionary limitations without destroying itself in the process. We have to show that consciousness is compatible with cosmic power. The silence from space suggests that most species cannot meet this challenge, but the absence of previous success doesn't make future success impossible. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the universe is waiting to see if we're different. The mathematics of our situation become more terrifying when you realize we're not just racing against time, we're racing against ourselves. Every breakthrough that brings us closer to transcending our limitations also amplifies our capacity for self-destruction. It's as if the universe has designed the ultimate test of intelligence, where success and failure are separated by the thinnest possible margin. Consider where we stand right now in this cosmic gauntlet. We've developed nuclear weapons capable of ending human civilization within hours. We've altered our planet's climate in ways that could trigger ecological collapse within decades. We've begun creating artificial minds that could surpass human intelligence within years. Each of these capabilities alone represents an existential challenge that our ancestors never had to face. Together, they create a convergence of risks that would overwhelm even the wisest civilization. But what makes our situation unique in cosmic history is that we're the first species to recognize the Great Filter while we're still navigating it. Previous civilizations went blind into their transcendence moment, unaware that countless others had failed the same test. We have the unprecedented advantage of understanding what we're up against. This knowledge transforms the Great Filter from an inevitable doom into a solvable problem. We can study the failure modes that eliminated our predecessors. We can identify the cognitive biases and social dynamics that led them to make fatal decisions. We can design institutions and safeguards, specifically to prevent the mistakes that turn technological transcendence into species suicide. The challenge is implementing these solutions while the technologies themselves continue advancing at exponential rates. We're essentially trying to build safety systems for capabilities we don't yet possess, using decision-making processes designed for much simpler problems. It's like trying to design traffic laws for vehicles that haven't been invented yet, while those vehicles are already being built in secret laboratories around the world. Artificial intelligence development exemplifies this impossible timing problem. The same computational advances that make AI systems more powerful also make them more difficult to understand and control. By the time we fully comprehend how these systems work, they might already exceed human cognitive capabilities across all domains. We have to solve the alignment problem before we know exactly what we're aligning. The social coordination challenges are equally daunting. Preventing AI-driven catastrophes requires unprecedented cooperation between nations that view each other as strategic competitors. The same countries that share AI safety research must also compete for the economic and military advantages that advanced AI systems provide. Trust becomes nearly impossible when the stakes involve technologies that could determine which civilizations survive the next century. Historical precedents offer little guidance because humanity has never faced challenges of this magnitude. The closest analogy might be nuclear weapons control during the Cold War, but even that comparison understates the current situation. Nuclear weapons are discrete objects that can be counted, monitored, and controlled through traditional diplomatic mechanisms. Advanced AI systems are information patterns that can be copied, modified, and distributed through digital networks that span the globe. The biotechnology dimension adds another layer of complexity that makes traditional arms control approaches obsolete. The same laboratory equipment used for legitimate medical research can potentially be used to engineer pandemic-scale biological weapons. The knowledge required to create such weapons spreads through scientific publications, university courses, and online communities that operate across national boundaries. Unlike nuclear weapons, which require rare materials and sophisticated infrastructure, biological weapons could theoretically be developed by individuals or small groups with access to increasingly common biotechnology tools. The democratization of these capabilities means that catastrophic bioweapons could emerge from sources that governments can't monitor or control through conventional means. The time compression factor makes everything worse. Our ancestors had generations to adapt to new technologies like agriculture or metallurgy. We have decades to figure out artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and climate engineering before these capabilities become too widespread and powerful to manage safely. The learning curve is steeper, the stakes are higher, and the margin for error approaches zero. This creates what researchers call the wisdom lag problem. Our technological capabilities are advancing much faster than our collective wisdom about how to use them responsibly. We're like children who've discovered how to build nuclear reactors before we've learned basic principles of safety and responsibility. The gap between what we can do and what we should do widens with each scientific breakthrough. The psychological challenges compound the technical ones. Human minds evolved to handle immediate, visible threats within small social groups. We're extraordinarily good at responding to predators, natural disasters, and interpersonal conflicts. We're remarkably bad at assessing and responding to global, long-term, probabilistic risks that could eliminate our entire species. Climate change demonstrates this cognitive mismatch perfectly. The threat is real, scientifically documented, and potentially catastrophic. But because the consequences unfold over decades rather than minutes, and because the causal mechanisms are complex rather than direct, many people struggle to treat it with appropriate urgency. Our brains simply aren't wired to properly process risks of this type. Artificial intelligence risks follow the same pattern, but with even shorter timelines and higher stakes. The possibility that AI systems could recursively improve themselves to superintelligent levels within years or months exceeds our cognitive capacity for risk assessment. The scenarios seem so science-fictional that even experts struggle to maintain appropriate levels of concern and preparation. The social dynamics of technological development create additional barriers to rational risk management. Innovation occurs within competitive markets and geopolitical environments that reward speed over safety. Companies and nations that take time to develop comprehensive safety measures risk being overtaken by competitors who prioritize rapid deployment over careful testing. These competitive pressures become more intense as the technologies become more powerful. Early-stage AI development might allow for cautious, incremental progress, with extensive safety testing at each stage. But as AI systems approach human-level capabilities, the strategic advantages of being first become so enormous that safety considerations inevitably take a backseat to speed. The same pattern appears in biotechnology, where the first groups to achieve reliable genetic enhancement or life extension technologies could gain advantages that compound over generations. The pressure to move quickly becomes overwhelming, even when everyone involved understands the risks of rushing development. International cooperation becomes nearly impossible under these conditions. Nations that fall behind in critical technology development face potential subjugation or elimination by those that advance faster. Even well-intentioned leaders find themselves forced to participate in technological arms races that everyone recognizes as dangerous but no one can afford to lose. The prisoner's dilemma dynamics are inescapable. If everyone could agree to develop dangerous technologies slowly and carefully, all civilizations would be safer. But if any group defects from such agreements to gain competitive advantages, they force everyone else to abandon safety measures or face potential domination. The result is a race to the bottom where safety becomes a luxury that no one can afford. These coordination failures probably explain why so many civilizations in galactic history failed to navigate their transcendence moment successfully. The technical challenges of developing safe AI, preventing biological catastrophes, and managing climate change are difficult but potentially solvable. The social challenges of maintaining cooperation while technologies advance exponentially might be fundamentally impossible for most species. The cognitive biases that helped our ancestors survive in small groups become fatal liabilities when applied to planetary-scale coordination problems. Tribal thinking makes us view other nations as competitors rather than partners in species survival. Short-term thinking makes us prioritize immediate advantages over long-term existential safety. Overconfidence makes us underestimate the probability and consequences of low-frequency, high-impact disasters. These same biases probably existed in every intelligent species that ever evolved. Natural selection shapes minds for individual and small group survival, not for managing planetary-scale technologies that could eliminate entire civilizations. The mismatch between our evolved psychology and our current situation might be the ultimate explanation for the Great Filter, but recognizing these limitations also suggests potential solutions. If we understand why civilizations typically fail during their transcendence moment, we can design institutions and decision-making processes specifically to counteract the biases and coordination problems that lead to failure. We can create systems that force long-term thinking, encourage cooperation, and prioritize safety over competitive advantage. The key insight is that survival requires more than just technical solutions to individual risks. It requires fundamental changes in how we organize society, make collective decisions, and think about our relationship with technology. We need new forms of governance that can coordinate global responses to existential risks. We need new economic systems that can internalize the long-term costs of dangerous technological development. We need new educational approaches that prepare people to think rationally about low-probability, high-impact events, ancient wisdom, the collective ability to recognize, and, most importantly, we need to develop what researchers call exist rock layers for future archaeologists to puzzle over. This problem, we might become the first species in operate at the level of institutions and cultures, not just individuals. It must persist, another civilization that came tantalizingly close to transcendence before destroying change rapidly. The development of existential wisdom represents humanity'd respond appropriately to threats that could eliminate our entire species. This wisdom must across generations and remain effective even as technologies and social conditions' greatest challenge and our greatest opportunity. If we can solve species, fail this test. But the absence of previous success doesn't make future success impossible. Somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the universe is waiting to discover AI development, climate policy, biotechnology regulation, and international cooperation moves a test of wisdom rather than intelligence, and path humanity takes. We'll either develop the wisdom necessary, importantly, we know that the test exists, and understand, but that future isn't inevitable. The great filter represents capable of spreading life and consciousness to every corner of cosmic space. Roughly what it involves. The next few decades will determine which galactic history to successfully navigate the great filter. We could inherit important experiment in the history of intelligence, the attempt to prove itself through its own creations. The ruins of our city's wood wisdom can be developed through conscious effort and institutional designances, becoming another failed experiment in intelligence to eventually erode away, leaving only faint chemical signatures in a universe that's been waiting billions of years for intelligence from us closer to one outcome or the other. We're not passive. We have advantages that our predecessors to manage world-changing technologies safely, or we'll become another court observers of our own fate. We're active participants in the most have never been higher. Every decision we make about institutions and scientific understanding of the risks we face, most that consciousness can transcend its evolutionary limitations without destroying itself in act. Global communication networks, internationality tale written in the cosmic silence. The universe is watching, and the stakes alternative is joining the cosmic silence that sorrow whether intelligence and cosmic power can coexist to the process. The silence from space reminds us that most, whether consciousness represents a permanent feature of cosmic evolution or just a brief flicker that burns out whenever it burns too bright, we're about to find out which side of that equation humanity falls on. The great filter awaits, and time is running short. The mathematics of our cosmic test become even more stark when you consider the accelerating nature of the risks we face. Unlike previous existential challenges in human history, these aren't distant threats we can address over generations. They're approaching with exponential velocity, compressed into a timeline that spans mere decades rather than centuries. Think about it this way. Nuclear weapons took roughly 20 years to develop from theoretical possibility to deployed arsenal. Climate change has been building for over a century, but only recently reached the threshold where its effects become irreversible within decades. Artificial intelligence has progressed from simple algorithms to systems approaching human-level reasoning in less than 50 years, with the timeline to superhuman capabilities measured in years rather than decades. Each breakthrough doesn't just add to our capabilities, it multiplies them. Every advance in computing power makes AI development faster. Every discovery in biotechnology makes genetic engineering more accessible. Every improvement in manufacturing makes dangerous technologies cheaper and more widespread. We're riding an exponential curve that's accelerating beyond our ability to maintain control. The convergence timing creates what scientists call the synchronicity trap. All of these existential challenges are arriving simultaneously, not because of cosmic coincidence, but because they emerge from the same scientific foundations. The physics that enables nuclear power also enables nuclear weapons. The computing advances that create beneficial AI also enable autonomous weapons. The biology that promises to cure diseases also enables engineered pandemics. We're essentially trying to solve multiple civilization-ending problems at once, while the solutions to each problem create new risks that interact with all the others. It's like trying to defuse a dozen interconnected bombs while blindfolded. where cutting the wrong wire on any device could trigger explosions in all the others. The psychological pressure of this situation exceeds anything humans have ever experienced. Previous generations faced immediate threats like wars, famines, or natural disasters. Those challenges were terrible, but they were comprehensible within human timescales and experience. You could see the enemy army approaching, feel the hunger from crop failures, or watch the floodwaters rising. Today's existential risks operate in ways that violate every instinct evolution gave us for threat assessment. They're probabilistic rather than certain, delayed rather than immediate, and global rather than local. Our minds simply aren't equipped to maintain appropriate levels of concern about threats that might materialize years or decades in the future through mechanisms we can't directly observe. This creates a peculiar form of psychological exhaustion that researchers call existential fatigue. People become overwhelmed by the magnitude and complexity of civilization-scale risks, leading them to either ignore the problems entirely or become paralyzed by despair. Neither response leads to the kind of sustained, rational action necessary to address challenges of this scale. The media landscape makes this worse by turning existential risks into entertainment or political talking points rather than serious policy challenges. Climate change becomes a partisan issue rather than a technical problem requiring engineering solutions. AI development becomes science fiction speculation rather than careful risk assessment and safety research. Nuclear proliferation becomes geopolitical drama rather than species survival mathematics. Meanwhile, the actual decision makers who control these technologies operate within institutional frameworks designed for much simpler problems. Democratic governments struggle to make long-term commitments that extend beyond electoral cycles. Corporate structures prioritize quarterly profits over generational survival. International organizations lack the authority to enforce agreements about technologies that could eliminate civilization. The mismatch between the governance systems we have and the challenges we face might be the most fundamental obstacle to navigating the Great Filter successfully. We're trying to manage planetary scale, species-level risks using institutions designed for local, tribal-scale cooperation. It's like trying to perform brain surgery with stone tools. But this institutional mismatch also points toward potential solutions. If we can identify the specific governance failures that lead civilizations to destroy themselves during transcendence, we might be able to design new institutions specifically optimized for existential risk management. The key insight is that survival requires institutional innovation as much as technological innovation. The cosmic silence that surrounds us isn't just the absence of alien voices. It's the echo of every civilization that stood where we stand now, facing the same impossible choice between transcendence and extinction. They all believed they were different. They all thought they could navigate the gauntlet of technologies that promise godhood while threatening annihilation. The universe is littered with their remains, and their silence is the only testament to their failure. But we have something they didn't. We know the test exists. We understand the patterns that lead to civilization collapse. We can see the Great Filter approaching and prepare for it rather than stumbling blindly into the cosmic graveyard. Whether that knowledge is enough to save us remains the greatest question in human history. The next few decades will determine whether humanity becomes the exception or just another footnote in the universe's catalogue of failed experiments in intelligence. The Great Filter awaits, and our time to prove that consciousness can survive its own power is running out. The universe is watching, and the silence of our predecessors offers no comfort. We're about to discover whether intelligence truly represents the universe becoming aware of itself, or simply another evolutionary dead end dressed up in the illusion of cosmic significance.